Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a truly wild 11-year stretch from 1648 to 1659. You see, during this time, Shivaji Maharaj didn't just capture a bit of territory here and there. No, he literally engineered an entire empire right out of the incredibly rugged terrain of Maharashtra. We're going to look at the absolute masterclass of those 11 transformative years.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the stakes here, they are absolutely massive. The ultimate test of any visionary isn't just coming up with a dream of freedom. It's actually surviving the giant target that the dream places on your back. We're tracking a leader who started with this incredibly ambitious vision, only to quickly realize that the closer that dream came to reality, well, the more dangerous his world became.
Right after his early capture of Torna Fort, we see the first real phase of his journey. And this initial expansion wasn't just driven by some basic desire for more land. Not at all. It was actually fueled by a highly specific, radical vision that was rapidly taking root in the minds of the people across Maharashtra.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the core concept of Swarajya, self-rule. Back in the 17th century, this was a completely revolutionary idea. People weren't just fighting for some distant, untouchable monarch anymore. They were fighting for the fundamental belief that they had the right to govern themselves. That single, powerful idea became the unstoppable engine driving his massive local support.
So, the crucial point is that his growing influence definitely wasn't an accident. It was a methodical, three-pillar approach: strategy, diplomacy, and military planning. While the surrounding regional powers were pretty much just relying on sheer brute force, Shivaji was essentially playing multi-dimensional chess. He was constantly balancing these brilliant strategic alliances with highly calculated military moves.
But to play that game effectively, you've got to know the board better than anyone else, right? And here, the actual physical geography of Maharashtra is basically a main character in our story. The Sahyadri Mountains are notoriously unforgiving. We're talking sheer vertical drops and super dense terrain. But instead of seeing this as a roadblock, Shivaji realized that whoever mastered these mountains controlled the future.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how he pulled that off. He didn't just capture stone walls and call it a day. He optimized them. By drastically revamping the administration and carefully stockpiling supplies, he made sure these forts could actually survive long, grueling sieges. He turned them from mere structures into these impenetrable, perfectly administered lifelines. So why does this matter? Because controlling these forts meant he took a massive geographic challenge and completely flipped it into his greatest strategic advantage. These forts were undeniably powerful military strongholds, locking down the landscape, sure. But they were also huge psychological symbols. Every single time the locals saw the Bagua flag flying high on a well-supplied fort, it was a physical guarantee that self-rule was alive and well. But let's be real, the strongest fort in the world is totally useless without the right people defending it. Shivaji was backed by fiercely loyal commanders and the brave Mavala warriors. Now, these weren't just your standard soldiers. These were locals who could navigate those treacherous mountains in the pitch black of night. Their absolute mastery of Ganami Kava, guerrilla tactics, made them an incredibly elusive, incredibly deadly force. Let's move to and see how this builds over an 11-year period. The momentum here is just undeniable. In the late 1640s, he's quietly strengthening internal fort defenses. By the early 1650s, he shifts outward, grabbing massive local support, and by the time we hit the mid-1650s, the result is crystal clear. Shivaji Maharaj has officially arrived as a formidable regional power.
But here's the catch. When you become a powerful leader, you step on toes. Big toes. The era of quiet expansion is officially over. The tension is rising. The Adilshahi rulers of Bijapur, this massive, sprawling empire with seemingly endless resources, they are watching. And the sleeping giant is now wide awake.
To the Adilshahi court, this wasn't just some minor rebellion or a pesky border annoyance anymore. It was an existential threat to their absolute authority. The panic in the court escalated rapidly, and they came to one definitive, ruthless conclusion. Shivaji's influence and this entire Swarajya movement had to be completely crushed.
Which brings us to 1659. Just let that date sit with you for a second. This is the exact moment everything changes. We transition from diplomatic maneuvering and simmering regional tension straight into an all-out war. Everything built over the last decade is about to be tested in the most extreme way possible. Bijapur doesn't just send a warning, they deploy Afzal Khan. He was a towering, ruthless general with a genuinely terrifying reputation, and he's bringing a massive, heavily armed force with him. His one and only objective: march straight into Maharashtra, break the Maratha spirit, and end Swarajya forever. The sheer scale of the threat heading directly for them is just staggering.
We are now entering the final act here, leading straight into one of the most famous encounters in Indian history. But what makes this impending clash so fascinating isn't just the military aspect, it's a total masterclass in crisis management. Shivaji Maharaj is staring down an overwhelming, seemingly unstoppable force. So how on earth does he respond?
He responds exactly how he built his movement in the first place. He leans into his intellect over sheer force. Instead of meeting all that brute strength head-on, he relies on meticulous preparation. His deep intelligence networks and his intimate knowledge of the treacherous local terrain become his ultimate weapons. All that quiet, peacetime preparation from years ago, that is exactly what he uses to face this monumental danger.
And so, the stage is set. Two massive forces, representing two completely different approaches to warfare, are on a direct collision course. They're going to meet at Pratapgarh, an area choked by dense, unforgiving jungles, blanketing the foot of the fort. This confrontation is about to transform Shivaji into a legendary figure and drastically alter the course of history.
Which leaves us with one incredibly pivotal question. How will all of Shivaji's careful planning, his deep intelligence networks, and his absolute mastery of the rugged terrain actually hold up when placed face-to-face against Afzal Khan's massive, experienced army? What exactly happens when an unstoppable force meets a deeply strategic, immovable object? You definitely don't want to miss how this plays out in our next explainer.